Come, Nerevar, come, witness the Oblivion Remastered, and the traitors that populate the mongrel dog of the Empire province Seridur, and the realm of the false god Sheogorath, the Daedric prince of madness, the Shivering Isles. Just like in Skyrim, there are many Enwas that you just cannot trust here. You turn your face around and they, well, betray you and turn you into Glarthir, who ironically becomes a traitor himself by betraying his neighbors and putting them on a list of the unliving. Seriously, Nerevar, the Suiril brothers, Tutius Demonetizius, and Bernadette Penniless, all didn't think that badly of Glarthir. Nevertheless, he wanted them removed from Nirn, a very treacherous and unhinged wood elf Enwa. He even betrays the Hero of Kvatch if they refuse to help him with his crazy shenanigans. Moving on to Jorundr and Arnora. Nerevar, have you ever had a couple's squabble that turned into a crime of such magnitude that your husband ended up in the Bruma jail? Well, that's what the mongrel dog Enwa Arnora got herself into. She and Jorundr are petty thieves, and after a robbery gone wrong and Jorundr's arrest, both of them are plotting against each other. Arnora wants to know where Jorundr's secret stash is, while Jorundr wants Arnona permanently removed from the face of Mundus. However, Nerevar, there is a secret traitor in their midst that you may not know about. It is a mongrel dog named Tyrellius Logellus, the Bruma Jailer, and professional eavesdropper who ambushes the Hero of Kvatch after dealing with Arnora. Typical day in Beyond Cyrodiil, Bruma. Unfortunately, Nerevar, Dunmer can be traitors too. You and I know this very well. Anyhow, there is this Dunmer named Raynil Dralas, who cosplays as a vampire hunter, and Nerevar, these dumb Enwas in Bruma, eat it up. The guards side with him after he claims that Brandon Lyrian was a vampire and snuffs his life out. He frames him by putting some dead Enwa into Brandon's basement. Nerevar, do you see a sign on Brandon Lyrian's house that says, Dead Enwa Storage? Do you see a sign that says, Dead Enwa Storage? No, as his wife would tell you, storing dead Outlanders is not his job. Raynil also did the same thing in Skingrad, and the guards there also bought the story. What a grand and intoxicating innocence. What incompetence. But besides the point, turns out that Raynil Dralas, Gelliborn, and Brandon Lyrian kept some treasure in a cave that required 3 keys. And well, Nerevar, as you can tell by the title of this sermon, Raynil Dralas betrayed them by labeling them as vampires and getting their keys to unlock the chest. Of course, the Hero of Kvatch stops him and gets the spoils of war. Seridur is a high elf Enwa, leading the Order of Virtuous Blood, who also claims to be hunting vampires. Nerevar, let me ask you this question. If someone tells you they are a vampire hunter and order you to eliminate some random Enwa named Roland Genseric, living in a cabin in the woods, would you take him seriously after the incident with Raynil Dralas? Write on the parchment down below, and raise your thumbs, and subscribe to my sermons while you are at it. Coming back to Seridur, though, he's a bloodthirsty vampire himself, cosplaying as a vampire hunter to throw off suspicion off himself. Of course, the Hero of Kvatch takes care of this traitor after his annoying monologue. We move on to Thadon, the Duke of Mania, and Syl, the Duchess of Dementia. The Duke of Mania is a Bosmer named Thadon, who is one of the few Bosmer in a position of power. Ever since the adoring Fan and Fargoth, they were meant to be simps. However, Sheogorath made him into a full-on Duke of Mania. He has a goofy-looking helmet that is surprisingly very powerful, called the Diadem of Euphoria. The Golden Saints are loyal to him after, of course, Sheogorath himself. In any case, to take his place, the Hero of Kvatch has to give him some... maybe too much green mote. Syl, the Duchess of Dementia, is also a Bosmer. Once again, I have not seen many of them in positions of power outside of Valenwood, so it is an impressive feat. Syl is extremely high-strung and paranoid about everyone around her. She even has a specialized chamber for shocking interrogations. Considering the fact that she literally gets annihilated by the Hero of Kvatch, she had a point in being paranoid. If one is eliminated, the other will betray the false god of madness, Sheogorath. Nerevar, you see. They are having an affair, and if the Hero of Kvatch decides to meddle in their little affair, the surviving lover will be so heartbroken that they will join the Knights of Order in order to advance that false god of order, Jagalag. Of course, the Hero of Kvatch deals with them promptly. Now the question here is this: does Sheogorath betray these two in any way? Is Sheogorath a traitor? Write your thoughts on the parchment below. There is also Muurine, living in New Sheoth, in the Crucible District. She is a high elf Enwa, obsessed with conspiracies. She lives with Uncle Leo, a zombie, who has to endure all of her conspiratorial ravings. She, alongside other courtiers of Dementia, is plotting against Syl, the Duchess of Dementia, and she is found out because the Hero of Kvatch becomes the Grand Inquisitor and interrogates everyone in a crucible to get to the bottom of this conspiracy. Syl eventually gives her some shock therapy. Nerevar, have you heard about the Deepscorn Hollow and the Crimson Scars? Well, there was this Altmer vampire Enwa named Lord Greywyn Blenwyth, and he betrayed the Dark Brotherhood by creating a splinter faction called the Crimson Scars, who were all vampires. He tried to infect the other Dark Brotherhood members, but was betrayed by the Crimson Scars. He was destroyed in Deepscorn Hollow in the Second Era, which the Hero of Kvatch later rediscovered. Since we are now discussing factions and the Dark Brotherhood, we should discuss the difficult topic of the Breton Enwa, Mathieu Bellamont. Yes, Nerevar, the psycho of the Elder Scrolls, with a disturbing secret. You see, the reason he joined the Dark Brotherhood in the first place is to avenge a family tragedy. His mother used to have a good head on her shoulders until the appearance of Lucien Lechance, the speaker of the Dark Brotherhood. So Bellamont, driven by grief and vengeance, decided to infiltrate the Dark Brotherhood and take his revenge against Lucien. And what a glorious mess he makes of it. By the time the assassin arrives at Applewatch to inform Lucien about Bellamont's true intentions, the poor sod is already skewered like some roadside beast. It's a gruesome sight, Nerevar, that even I might not be able to fully show you the picture of this macabre art piece. Bellamont puts on his little act, feigning ignorance. Then comes the grand reveal. The lucky lady of Bravil is the Night Mother herself. Shady dealings even in Braville's most famous landmark. Wouldn't you agree? So the assassin and a few other hapless souls head to meet this Dunmer Night Mother, only for Bellamont to spring his trap, attacking everyone like a drunken gar. Foolish, wouldn't you say? A true Dark Brotherhood assassin would have picked them off one by one. But alas, some Enwas are just born incompetent, and you can imagine how well that went for him. Lastly, in the Dark Brotherhood, there is also this farm tool shadow-scale Argonian named Scartail, who decided to quiet quit working for the Dunmer Night Mother. Look, Nerevar, I would think that he is being reasonable if he wasn't an Argonian. The Fighters Guild only had one betrayal, and that is by the Wood Elf Maglir. It's almost like you cannot trust Wood Elves, Nerevar. There are 4 of them on this list already. Anyhow, Maglir defaults on a few contracts and does not complete them, for which he faces the wrath of Modron Orion. He eventually joins the Blackwood Company and starts working of them, only to be eliminated by the Hero of Kvatch during the final stand. Also, I would include the Blackwood Company and the Goblin Fiasco here, but I do not think what the Blackwood Company did to the Hero of Kvatch was betrayal. It was more of a response to the infiltration, but let me know if you disagree on the parchment below. Well, Nerevar, the next traitor is a Dunmer. Look, Nerevar, it is a bit more complicated with the Dunmer. Unlike the Bosmer, their betrayals sort of make sense. Anyway, her name is Myvryna Arano, and she is a Thieves Guild member. However, she is actually a mole working for the mongrel dogs of the Empire, specifically Hieronymus Lex. She is tax-exempt, just like the worshippers of the false gods, which should be an indication that she might be a traitor to the Thieves Guild. However, the Hero of Kvatch successfully frames her, and the mongrel dogs arrest her, despite her being their mole. What did we learn here, Nerevar? Dunmer shouldn't trust the Empire. And trust me instead, Dagoth Ur. Now, Nerevar, we are moving on to the Mages Guild and the disaster they are experiencing because Hannibal Traven banned necromancy. So many guild members have become traitors, Nerevar. It shows the lack of academic freedom in the guild. Most of the betrayals have to do with necromancy, with the exception of Earana and Kalthar, of course. Earana is an Altmer mage that is interested in fingering the mountain. Wait, what do you mean a mistake? Oh, I apologize, Nerevar. Earana is interested in a book called Fingers of the Mountain that allows the user to cast an extremely powerful shock spell. She basically betrays the Coral Mages Guild and its farm tool leader, Tikus, by not obeying his rules. And, while I might not like Altmer Enwaz, good for her. You teach that lizard who is boss. Kalthar is a magical Nord Enwa, like we haven't had enough of those in Skyrim. Who is in the Mages Guild of Leowyn, because he is unhappy with the Bosmer Enwa de Gale, who needs an amulet to function. Otherwise, she is tormented by visions, and does not make any sense. When the Hero of Kvatch decides to become a grave robber and plunder the grave of de Gale's father to get her a second amulet, Kalthar decides to prevent that from happening and therefore betraying the guild. Of course, he gets dealt with very quickly and easily. The rest of the Mages Guild traitors have to do with necromancy. First, there is Falcar, an Altmer Enwa, who is the leader of the Cheydinhall Mages Guild. He sends the Hero of Kvatch to a well in order to drown them, just like he did with another Enwa named Vidkun. However, he is unable to fulfill his mission. Later on, it is found out that he had a lot of black soul gems in his room. The Hero of Kvatch meets him later in some Ayleid ruin and defeats him in an unfair battle. Seriously, Nerevar, most traitors just get utterly annihilated by those who are afflicted with the main character syndrome. There is also Caranya, also an Altmer High Elf. All right, maybe that Enwa Pelinal has a point about some of the Mer, but not the Dunmer. If you look at the demographics of this sermon, it's mostly the Altmer and the Bosmer that are responsible for most of the betrayals. Anyhow, going back to Caranya, she is an Almer Enwa, who is a master wizard and part of the Council of Wizards in the Mages Guild. However, she is also, surprise, surprise, a master necromancer. She teleports to Fort Ontos to continue working with the necromancers and Manamarco. Of course, she is unable to succeed and is quickly defeated by the Hero of Kvatch. One last traitor I will discuss is Mercator Hosidus, is a mongrel dog of the Empire's steward of the Enwa vampire Count Janus Hasildor. He claims that the Jarl wants to speak with the Hero of Kvatch near some suspicious cave outside of Skingrad. Look, Nerevar, Glarthir might have been paranoid, but Skingrad is a dangerous place. Of course, Mercator Hosidus ambushes the Hero of Kvatch, but the Count... no, not that one. Count Janus Hasildor shows up to aid the Hero of Kvatch in defeating the traitor. There is also the Breton Enwa Jauffre, and he might not be a traitor in a traditional sense. But what stupid Enwa places the Amulet of Kings inside a wooden box? It does not matter if it is in a secret compartment. In Mundus, there is powerful magic, weapons, lockpicks, and other tools that can easily break wood. What was this fool thinking? Well, Nerevar, there is also the Betrayals of the Hero of Kvatch. It is such a long rap sheet that I will save it for another sermon. If you would like to hear more, please write the Enwa, Hero of Kvatch, betrayed me. Also, write on the parchment below if I have missed any other traitors. Don't forget to raise your thumbs and subscribe to my sermons as well. I would like to thank all members and patrons for supporting my work.